Japan in the early 1860s was a nation stuck in the past. Its economy was primarily agricultural, and it was socially stratified with an emperor at the top, followed by territorial lords, bureaucrats, merchants, artisans, and peasants. But all of that would soon change when a group of revolutionaries led by a young emperor overthrew the shogunate and established a new government. They called this period the Meiji Restoration because they wanted to return power to the emperor, who they viewed as a symbol of Japanese culture and identity, and to modernize the country along Western lines. So under their new constitution, which was heavily influenced by the Prussian model, the emperor held supreme authority and the nation was divided into three branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And this new government was eager to transform every aspect of Japanese life. As the new government took over, one of the first things they did was issue an edict abolishing the feudal system and granting the peasants new rights. This edict also applied to women, who now had the right to own property and to inherit and to bequeath property to whomever they pleased. It also made divorce easier, which sharply increased the number of divorces across the country. In addition, the government invested heavily in public education and created the first modern Japanese university, which was modeled after German universities. And just like the Germans, the Japanese began to pursue higher education zealously. By 1901, Japan had the highest rate of university enrollment in the world. But while the Japanese were embracing new ideas, not everyone was happy with the changes taking place in their society. Some of the biggest opponents of the new regime were the samurai, who under the old regime enjoyed a privileged lifestyle and held most of the political power. But now they were nothing more than a disgruntled special interest group whose influence had been removed. But the government hoped that by emphasizing loyalty to the emperor, they could win the samurai over to their side. And so they created a new official ideology called Kokaku, which literally means the way of the emperor. This ideology required all Japanese to be loyal to the state and to subordinate their own interests to those of the nation. It also promoted hard work, thrift, and obedience, which were deemed necessary to achieve national rejuvenation. And indeed, many Japanese, including the samurai, enthusiastically embraced this new ideology. However, not all groups were so easily co-opted. The biggest threat to the new order came from the merchants and the working class, who were largely based in the cities and who felt alienated by the values and goals of the new regime. As industrialization took off in Japan, these tensions only grew until finally in 1905, a group of discontented workers went on strike, which quickly turned into a full-blown riot. When the police and the military were dispatched to put down the uprising, it only further inflamed public opinion against the government. In response, the regime cracked down even harder, killing hundreds of protesters and arresting thousands more. This event became known as the 1905 incident, and it left a lasting legacy on Japanese politics, namely a deep distrust between the regime and the working class, which would only be overcome after the Second World War. Nevertheless, the Meiji leaders continued to push ahead with their modernization campaign. They reorganized the military along Western lines, creating conscripted army and navy. They also built railroads and factories and modernized the weapons and equipment of the army. The goal was to make Japan into a great industrial power capable of rivaling the West. And by the end of the century, they had accomplished this goal. Japan was now an economic power, and it had become a major player in international affairs. But there was one area where the Japanese still lagged behind the West, and that was in their technology. While the Japanese had made great strides in industrializing their economy, they were still far behind the West in such critical areas as steel production, heavy machinery, and precision instruments. The Japanese knew this, and they were eager to catch up. So they sent students to the United States and Europe to study engineering and other technical fields. And when they returned to Japan, they set about creating institutions to help the Japanese catch up to the West. One of the most important of these was the Tokyo Institute of Technology, which was modeled after the Massachusetts Institute of technology. Another important institution was the Research and Experiment Association, which was created to promote the practical application of science and technology. These institutions, along with others like them, helped the Japanese catch up to the West in terms of technology. By the end of the Meiji era, Japan had been completely transformed. It had gone from being an isolated agrarian country to being a modern industrial power. It had also gone from being a country with a weak central government to being a centralized bureaucratic state. And it had also gone from being a society that was largely unchanged for centuries to being a society in which change was the only constant. This transformation would have a profound impact on Japan's history and would set the stage for its emergence as a major power in the 20th century. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode, with a special thanks to my patrons.